Everyone knows that greedy corporations exploit the poor, right? That self-interested businesspeople only care about profits while hurting those who can least afford it. Well, after spending decades studying how economies actually work rather than how we wish they worked, I've discovered something that might shock you. The data tells exactly the opposite story. The most selfish corporations have done more to lift people out of poverty than all the well-intentioned government programs combined. This isn't opinion, it's measurable, verifiable economic reality. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you empirical evidence that will challenge everything you think you know about greed, self-interest, and helping the poor. We'll examine how market incentives create outcomes that no amount of good intentions can match, why competition forces even the greediest businessmen to serve others, and how the profit motive has generated the greatest reduction in global poverty in human history. By the end, you'll understand why Adam Smith's invisible hand isn't just economic theory, it's the most powerful anti-poverty mechanism ever discovered. The evidence is overwhelming, and it's time we faced the facts about what actually works to help the poor versus what makes us feel good about ourselves. Chapter 1: The Poverty Reduction Miracle You've Never Heard of. Let me start with some numbers that should make headlines but never do. In 1820, roughly 94% of the world's population lived in what we would consider extreme poverty today. By 1981, that number had dropped to 44%. And by 2015, just 10%. We're talking about the greatest reduction in human suffering in recorded history, and it accelerated precisely when free market capitalism spread globally. Now, what caused this miracle? Was it foreign aid programs? Government welfare initiatives? International redistribution schemes? The data is crystal clear. It was economic growth driven by private enterprise, competition, and yes, corporate profit-seeking. Countries that embraced market economics saw dramatic poverty reduction. Countries that rejected markets remained poor. Consider China's experience. When Mao's communist policies were in place, millions starved. When Deng Xiaoping introduced market reforms in 1978, allowing private enterprise and profit-seeking, China lifted 800 million people out of poverty in just 4 decades. That's not coincidence, that's cause and effect. Or look at South Korea versus North Korea. Same people, same culture, same geography. One embraced markets, the other rejected them. Today, South Korea's per capita income is more than 20 times higher than North Korea's. The South Korean, greedy corporations, created prosperity that benefits everyone, while North Korea's well-intentioned central planning created widespread poverty. The mechanism isn't mysterious. When a corporation wants to make money, it must provide something people value more than the money they're asked to pay. Every voluntary transaction makes both parties better off. The customer gets something worth more to them than their money, and the business gets money worth more to them than their product or service. Here's what's remarkable. This process works regardless of the businessman's motives. Whether he's the greediest person alive or the most altruistic, market competition forces him to serve others first if he wants to succeed. A greedy restaurant owner still has to provide good food at reasonable prices, or customers will go elsewhere. A selfish manufacturer still has to create products people want at prices they can afford, or competitors will take his business. This is why the freest economies consistently produce the highest living standards for everyone, including the poor. Switzerland, Singapore, Hong Kong before the Chinese takeover, these market-oriented societies created prosperity that lifted all boats. Meanwhile, societies organized around good intentions rather than market incentives, like Venezuela or Cuba, created misery for everyone except the political elite. The evidence is overwhelming. Private enterprise motivated by profit has done more to help the poor than all the government anti-poverty programs in history combined. Chapter 2: How Competition Turns Greed into Service. The beautiful irony of free markets is that competition transforms private vice into public virtue. Let me explain exactly how this works, because it's the key to understanding why greedy corporations end up helping the poor most. In a competitive market, greed becomes self-defeating unless it serves others. Imagine a businessman who wants to maximize profits. He has two choices: he can try to exploit customers, or he can try to serve them better than anyone else. What happens to the exploiter? Customers flee to competitors who offer better value. The exploiter goes bankrupt. What happens to the server? Customers flock to him, and he prospers. This isn't theory. I've watched it happen countless times during my years studying markets. When I was developing monetarist theory at the University of Chicago, we analyzed industry after industry. The pattern was always the same: companies that tried to exploit customers lost market share to those that served them better. Consider how this plays out for the poor specifically. Walmart is often criticized as the epitome of corporate greed. Yet Walmart's business model depends entirely on providing goods at the lowest possible prices. Who benefits most from low prices? The poor, who have the least disposable income. Walmart's greed forces it to become the poor person's best friend. The same dynamic works with employment. Companies compete for workers just as they compete for customers. A business that tries to underpay workers will lose them to competitors offering better wages and conditions. This competitive pressure has driven wages up throughout American history, not because employers became more generous, but because competition forced them to bid for workers. The same pattern appears everywhere: air travel, computers, automobiles, refrigeration, electricity. Each started as a luxury for the rich, then profit-seeking companies competed to make them affordable for everyone. Henry Ford didn't make cars affordable because he was altruistic. He did it because mass production and mass sales meant bigger profits. But his greed benefited millions of ordinary people who gained access to transportation that transformed their lives. This is why attempts to suppress corporate profits always backfire against the poor. When governments impose price controls or excessive regulations, they reduce the incentive for businesses to serve customers. The result? Shortages, declining quality, and reduced innovation. The poor suffer most because they have the fewest alternatives. The invisible hand works because it aligns private interests with public benefit. A greedy businessman in a competitive market can only get rich by making other people better off. Remove the competition through government intervention, and you remove the mechanism that transforms greed into service. Chapter 3: The Innovation Engine That Lifts All Boats. Here's where we need to examine the evidence more carefully, because this is crucial for understanding how free markets help the poor. Innovation driven by profit-seeking has created the most powerful anti-poverty force in human history. Let me walk you through exactly how this works. When businesses compete for profits, they constantly seek ways to do things better, faster, and cheaper. This innovation process creates what economists call creative destruction. Old ways of doing things get destroyed and replaced by better methods. The result is steadily improving living standards for everyone, but especially the poor. Consider the agricultural revolution. In 1800, it took about 95% of the population working in agriculture to feed everyone. Profit-seeking farmers and agricultural companies developed better seeds, fertilizers, machinery, and techniques. Today, less than 2% of Americans work in agriculture, yet we produce far more food than we need. This productivity revolution freed up 93% of the population to work in other industries, creating the modern economy. Who benefited most? The poor. They went from subsistence farming to factory jobs with steady wages. Then from factory jobs to service jobs with better working conditions. Each wave of innovation created new opportunities for people to improve their circumstances. The pattern repeats in industry after industry. When Thomas Edison's companies developed electric lighting, they weren't thinking about helping the poor, they were thinking about profits. But electric lighting revolutionized working conditions, extended productive hours, and made countless new industries possible. The poor gained access to lighting that was safer, cleaner, and more reliable than anything available before. More recently, look at the computer revolution. When profit-seeking companies like IBM, Intel, Apple, and Microsoft competed to develop better computers, they created an entire new economy. Today, someone in rural America can start an online business from their kitchen table and reach customers worldwide. These opportunities simply didn't exist before corporate innovation made them possible. The pharmaceutical industry provides another clear example. Yes, drug companies charge high prices for new medications. That's how they recover the enormous costs of research and development. But this profit motive has produced miracle drugs that save millions of lives and reduce suffering on a massive scale. The poor in America today have access to medical treatments that weren't available to the richest people 50 years ago. What's remarkable is how quickly innovations move from luxury items for the rich to necessities available to everyone. Air conditioning, automobiles, televisions, computers, cell phones, all started expensive and exclusive, then became cheap and universal as companies competed for mass markets. This trickle-down of innovation happens because profits are highest when you can sell to the most people. Government programs, by contrast, rarely innovate. They use the same approaches year after year, regardless of results. When I studied welfare programs during my career, I found they often trapped people in poverty rather than helping them escape it. Why? Because government agencies don't face competitive pressure to improve their performance. They get funded whether they succeed or fail. The profit motive creates an entirely different dynamic. Companies that fail to innovate get driven out of business by those that do. This constant pressure to improve generates the technological progress that has transformed human civilization and created unprecedented prosperity for all social classes. Chapter 4: Why Good Intentions Fail and Self-Interest Succeeds. Now we need to confront an uncomfortable truth. Programs designed specifically to help the poor often hurt them, while businesses pursuing profits help them enormously. This isn't a paradox, it's predictable once you understand how incentives work in different systems. When I analyzed government anti-poverty programs during my research, I discovered a consistent pattern. Programs started with noble intentions invariably created perverse incentives that made poverty worse. Take welfare systems that penalize marriage and work. They were designed to help single mothers, but they ended up encouraging family breakdown and long-term dependency. The road to poverty is paved with good intentions. Why does this happen? Because good intentions don't automatically create good results. You need the right incentive structure. Government programs typically reward failure and penalize success. Welfare agencies get bigger budgets when poverty increases, not when it decreases. This creates institutional incentives to perpetuate the problems they're supposed to solve. Market systems work exactly opposite. Businesses only profit by solving real problems for real people. A company that fails to deliver value to customers goes bankrupt, regardless of how good its intentions were. This harsh but fair accountability mechanism ensures that resources flow toward what actually works. Consider education, where we can compare these approaches directly. Public schools operate like government agencies. They get funded based on enrollment, not performance. Teachers and administrators keep their jobs whether students learn or not. The predictable result? Stagnant or declining performance, especially in poor neighborhoods where students need help most. Now look at private schools and charter schools that must compete for students. They face immediate consequences if they fail to deliver results. Parents will take their children elsewhere. This competitive pressure forces constant improvement in teaching methods, curriculum, and school management. Studies consistently show that school choice programs benefit poor children most, because they escape failing schools and gain access to quality education. The same pattern appears in housing. Rent control laws are designed to help poor tenants by keeping housing affordable. What actually happens? Landlords stop maintaining properties, developers stop building new housing, and housing shortages make everyone worse off. Meanwhile, markets where housing prices are allowed to fluctuate create incentives for developers to build more housing, which increases supply and keeps prices affordable over time. Here's what my decades of research taught me: good intentions are not enough. You need good incentives. And the best incentives come from systems where people succeed by serving others, not by appearing virtuous or following bureaucratic rules. This is why countries that rely primarily on market solutions consistently outperform countries that rely on government programs. It's why Hong Kong, with minimal social programs but maximum economic freedom, eliminated poverty while countries with extensive welfare states still struggle with it. The irony is profound. The greedy businessman who just wants to make money ends up helping more poor people than the well-intentioned social worker who dedicates his life to fighting poverty. Why? Because the businessman faces market discipline that rewards results, while the social worker operates in a system that rewards good intentions regardless of outcomes. Chapter 5: The Employment Ladder That Government Breaks. Let me ask you to consider something most people never think about. How do poor people actually escape poverty? The answer is simple: they get jobs, develop skills, gain experience, and climb the employment ladder. And who provides this ladder? Not government agencies. Private businesses do. Every successful business is essentially a poverty-fighting machine, whether its owners realize it or not. When a company hires someone, it's giving them more than just a paycheck. It's providing training, experience, references, and skills that make them more valuable in the job market. The employee who starts sweeping floors can learn enough to become a supervisor, then a manager, then maybe start their own business. I've seen this process work millions of times throughout American economic history. My own family experienced it. Immigrants arrived with nothing but willingness to work, took entry-level jobs, learned skills, saved money, and built better lives for their children. This is how free markets create upward mobility, not through redistribution, but through opportunity creation. But here's the crucial point: this employment ladder only works when businesses can afford to hire inexperienced workers and train them. Government policies often destroy this mechanism by making it too expensive or risky for employers to hire people who lack skills. Minimum wage laws provide a perfect example. They're sold as helping poor workers, but they actually price inexperienced workers out of the job market. When you legally require employers to pay $15 per hour, they won't hire someone whose skills are only worth $15 per hour. They won't hire someone whose skills are only worth $15 per hour. They won't hire someone whose skills are only worth $8 per hour. That person loses the opportunity to gain experience and develop more valuable skills. Who gets hurt most by minimum wage laws? Exactly the people they're supposed to help: young people, minorities, and those without college education. These groups see their unemployment rates rise whenever minimum wages increase. Meanwhile, experienced workers who already earn above minimum wage face no negative effects. The same destructive pattern appears with occupational licensing requirements. Government agencies require licenses for hundreds of occupations, from hair braiding to flower arranging. These requirements are supposedly for consumer protection, but they actually protect established businesses from competition while preventing poor people from starting their own enterprises. Consider taxi licensing, which I studied extensively. Cities limited the number of taxi licenses and made them extremely expensive to obtain. This created artificial scarcity that benefited existing taxi companies while preventing ordinary people from earning income by driving. Then Uber and Lyft used technology to circumvent these restrictions, and suddenly millions of people could earn money with their own cars. Government fought these innovations every step of the way. The pattern is clear: free markets create employment opportunities, while government regulations destroy them. Every regulatory barrier, every licensing requirement, every mandate that increases the cost of hiring makes it harder for businesses to provide the entry-level jobs that help people escape poverty. This is why cities and states with the most business regulations tend to have the highest poverty rates, while those with lighter regulatory burdens see more job creation and upward mobility. It's not coincidence, it's cause and effect. When businesses can freely hire, fire, and set wages based on market conditions, they create maximum opportunities for people to find work and develop skills. When government constrains these decisions through regulations, it breaks the employment ladder that offers the only reliable path out of poverty. Chapter 6: The Consumer Democracy That Serves the Poor. Here's something that will surprise you: the freest, most competitive markets are actually the most democratic institutions in society. Every dollar spent is a vote, and businesses must constantly campaign for those votes by serving customers better than their competitors. And in this consumer democracy, poor people have real power. Think about how this works in practice. When you walk into any store in America, your money talks just as loudly as anyone else's. Walmart doesn't ask about your income before selling you groceries. McDonald's doesn't check your credit score before serving you lunch. Amazon doesn't require a background check before shipping your order. In the marketplace, everyone's money is green. This creates powerful incentives for businesses to serve all customers well, including those with limited incomes. Companies that ignore poor customers lose access to a huge market segment. Smart businesses figure out how to profitably serve people at every income level. The result? Phone service became dramatically cheaper and more accessible. Companies developed calling plans specifically designed for low-income customers. Then came cell phones, which democratized communication even further. Today, poor Americans have communication capabilities that exceeded what the president had access to 50 years ago. The same pattern appears everywhere markets are allowed to work. Airlines used to be heavily regulated, expensive, and primarily served business travelers and the wealthy. Deregulation brought competition, which brought innovation in pricing and service delivery. Now ordinary families can afford to fly places that were once accessible only to the rich. Contrast this with government services, which consistently fail to serve poor people well. Public schools in poor neighborhoods are often the worst in their districts. Government agencies make people wait in long lines, follow complex bureaucratic procedures, and accept whatever service quality the agency chooses to provide. There's no competition, so there's no pressure to improve. In markets, poor customers get the same protections as everyone else. If a company sells defective products or provides bad service, customers can switch to competitors. This threat keeps businesses honest and constantly improving their offerings. Government agencies face no such discipline. The beauty of consumer democracy is that it gives poor people choices. Instead of being stuck with whatever the government provides, they can shop around for the best combination of price, quality, and service. This freedom to choose creates powerful incentives for businesses to innovate specifically to serve people with limited means. Look at how discount retailers revolutionized shopping for low-income families. Walmart, Target, Dollar General, and others compete intensely to provide good value for money. They've driven down the cost of everything from clothing to household goods, effectively giving poor families a raise without changing their wages. Online commerce has accelerated this trend. Poor people can now comparison shop instantly, access global markets, and find deals that were impossible before the internet. They can buy directly from manufacturers, cutting out middlemen who add costs without adding value. This consumer democracy works because businesses profit by serving customers, not by controlling them. The more customers choose your business over competitors, the more successful you become. This creates a virtuous cycle where companies constantly seek new ways to provide value to people at every income level. Chapter 7: The Choice Between Freedom and Control. We're now at the crucial point where we must choose between two fundamentally different approaches to helping the poor: the market approach that has actually worked throughout history, or the government approach that continues to fail despite good intentions. The market approach is simple: remove barriers that prevent people from working, saving, investing, and starting businesses. Eliminate regulations that protect established interests at the expense of newcomers. End licensing requirements that keep people out of occupations. Stop minimum wage laws that price inexperienced workers out of jobs. Allow competition in education, healthcare, and other services that poor people need most. This approach has worked everywhere it's been tried. When countries embrace economic freedom, poverty rates plummet. When they restrict markets, poverty persists or increases. The correlation is so strong it's almost a law of economics. The government approach is equally simple: take money from some people and give it to others, while creating agencies to manage various social programs. Build a vast bureaucracy dedicated to fighting poverty through redistribution rather than opportunity creation. This approach has failed everywhere it's been tried extensively. Countries that rely primarily on government programs to address poverty end up with permanent welfare classes, economic stagnation, and declining opportunities for upward mobility. The poverty rate becomes frozen at whatever level triggers maximum political support for anti-poverty spending. Why does the market approach work while the government approach fails? Because markets create wealth while governments can only redistribute it. A growing economy provides opportunities for everyone to improve their circumstances. A stagnant economy forces different groups to fight over fixed resources. Markets also provide automatic feedback mechanisms that government programs lack. When a business fails to serve customers well, it loses money and either improves or closes. When a government program fails, it typically gets more funding and continues doing whatever it was doing before. The choice we face isn't between perfection and imperfection. Markets aren't perfect, they're just far superior to the alternatives. Some people will always struggle economically, regardless of the system. But free markets give the greatest number of people the best opportunities to succeed. Here's what my lifetime of studying these questions has taught me: every restriction on economic freedom hurts poor people more than anyone else. Wealthy people can navigate complex regulations, hire lawyers and accountants, and find ways around government barriers. Poor people can't. They depend on simple, straightforward opportunities to work and earn money. This is why the freest economies consistently have the highest living standards and the most upward mobility, while controlled economies trap people in poverty regardless of their natural abilities or work ethic. The evidence is overwhelming, but implementing market solutions requires political courage. It means telling people that good intentions aren't enough, that we need policies that actually work rather than policies that make us feel good about ourselves. It means accepting that greedy businesses constrained by competition serve poor people better than well-intentioned government agencies protected from accountability. Most importantly, it means trusting ordinary people to make decisions about their own lives rather than assuming bureaucrats know what's best for them. The choice is ours. We can continue expanding government programs that have failed for decades, or we can embrace the market solutions that have actually reduced poverty wherever they've been implemented. Conclusion: The evidence is clear and overwhelming. Free markets constrained by competition have done more to help the poor than all the well-intentioned government programs in history combined. This isn't ideology, it's observable, measurable reality based on decades of careful research and global experience. Greedy corporations in competitive markets must serve others to profit themselves. They create jobs, innovate solutions, reduce prices, and provide opportunities for upward mobility. Government programs, despite noble intentions, consistently create perverse incentives that trap people in poverty while enriching bureaucrats and politicians. The data shows that countries embracing economic freedom see dramatic poverty reduction, while those restricting markets maintain persistent poverty despite massive social spending. The mechanism isn't mysterious. Markets create wealth and opportunity, while government redistributes existing wealth less efficiently while reducing incentives for wealth creation. We face a choice: continue failed policies based on good intentions, or implement proven solutions based on economic reality. The poor deserve better than programs that make politicians feel virtuous while keeping families trapped in dependency. They deserve the opportunity, dignity, and upward mobility that only competitive markets provide. The next time someone tells you that greedy corporations hurt the poor, ask them to examine the evidence. Look at which approach actually reduces poverty rates, creates jobs, and improves living standards. The answer will surprise anyone who's been misled by rhetoric rather than guided by facts. The path forward is clear: remove barriers to opportunity, embrace competition, and trust in the power of free people making voluntary exchanges to create prosperity for all. That's not just good economics, it's the moral imperative of our time.